Welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch. It's the Friday before Thanksgiving, and I will have a Thanksgiving Day forecast and also the travel day before that, Wednesday, coming up this week. Before we get to that, we'll take a look at what's going on from the satellite's perspective, some radar shots, where the heavy rain is expected, and a rather important transition from the incredibly warm temperatures we'll start with to begin the work week and this weekend to the cooler trends that will dominate the forecast beginning on Thanksgiving and going through the early part of December. Let's dive in. Hello, I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. We'll start, as I almost always do, with the visible satellite loop showing the lower 48. Just a vivid shot. I just love the visible satellite loop. You can see sunset invading in the upper right-hand corner of the shot here. I try to grab this earlier in the day so we don't get too much of that. You definitely see some sort of development here. There is what we would call in meteorological circles a dry slot right here. This is just where low pressure is wrapping up, and in the upper atmosphere there's a low, and we draw air in from drier regions, especially here in the Midwest. We can tap this source region out here in the elevated areas of the Southwest, and dries out the air quite a bit usually, whereas precipitation is wrapping north of the warm front and the low, and I'll show you a radar shot in a minute. Even a couple of thunderstorms developing there in southeast Missouri. If we take a look at the 500 millibar chart, we have this quick moving, what we would call a short wave. So we have all kinds of troughs in the atmosphere. This is a cutoff low, which is by definition a trough, but it's just that the low is cut off. Then we have a short wave, and it's really just defined by how much of this little curvature do we see here. Here we don't see a whole lot. It doesn't extend down into Oklahoma. It's really just confined to Kansas and Missouri. So that's a shorter wave, whereas this would be considered a longer wave. And then we have a big low up here south of Hudson Bay, which actually has a trough extending out of it down into the Atlantic. So interesting weather pattern, kind of dynamic, really, a lot going on. We'll take a look at the surface map here, and we do have a low pressure area, weak, but defined there in western Missouri. Another cool front stretches through the Great Lakes states. Generally speaking, it's not at the surface. There's not a lot of sensible weather. We'll show you what there is out there here in a minute. If we take a look at what the model thinks things will be like at 3 p.m. today, this is basically just shows you the nice little wind animations. But keep in mind that the temperatures on here and even the positions of the isobars are all modeled data, not actual data. But it's pretty close. I always check it. So we see very warm conditions. St. Louis, 61 degrees, roughly in the 70s from Memphis back into Little Rock, and almost into the 80s in parts of Louisiana. Whereas you can see a swirl in the winds right there behind that low. And this high is not really doing much. It's not, this high pressure area here is not rooted in Canada, so it's not really that big of a cold air supplier, but we'll get to that in a minute. There certainly will be that coming on down the line for later next week. On the radar loop, we'll take a look at two of them. You'll notice there north of Rolla, Missouri, we had a little severe thunderstorm warning pop up. I think I recorded this right around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Could be a couple of more of those before the day is over. Otherwise, just this large area of just shield of mostly just rain. I don't think there's a lot of thunder in that. A couple more thunderstorms may form in this area here this evening, and generally speaking showers, but maybe some embedded thunder from Nashville south into the heart of Alabama. Another rain hotspot would be the southwest, in particular southwestern Arizona, parts of the desert areas of California. You can see we're looking at Las Vegas is right off the map up here. Phoenix is right here, and this is certainly rain swirling around that upper level low I just showed you, overlaid on top of that surface visible satellite loop is what I should say. And let's take a look at the heavy rain parameters and see what's going on there. Well, over the next 5 days, there's really three areas of rain. This one in the southwest is mostly out into Mexico, really. This one catches your attention, and it's been there for a while, this threat here in the lower Mississippi Valley into Texas. And then in the corner of the country up there in the in Washington and Oregon, a lot of that snow in the higher elevations, but let's focus in on this rain here in the south central U.S., where the red indicates 2 inches of forecast rain, and some of these darker colors, maybe even 3 in southeastern Oklahoma. This is over the next 5 days, but the primary bulk of this is going to fall when that upper level low that you saw over California lifts out into the plains. So if you look at the heavy rain forecast for the 3 to 7 day periods, this is on the 24th right here that this is valid. So that would be, let's see, 22, that'd be Monday. So again, that's when most of that rain I just showed you on the map is going to fall through mostly Arkansas and parts of adjacent states, not quite up into Missouri on this particular forecast anyway. Now, if we look at Thanksgiving through Monday, Thursday through Monday, this is the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook. You start to see a ramping up of confidence in precipitation through the high plains and through much of the Great Plains in that period. So will this now, again, when I should always let you know when the word precipitation is used in meteorological maps, it generally means it's not delineating between rain and snow or freezing rain or anything else like that. It's all the possible frozen stuff melted down. So this is precipitation, meaning once you melted, what actually has fallen. So this makes no comment about snow, and that's an important point to make. Let's take a look at those Thanksgiving forecast maps. Well, let's take a look at the day before. It's an important travel day, and the highlights really on this day would be the windy conditions expected through the plains, through Chicago, the Great Lakes states, increasingly getting into parts of New England and the eastern U.S. If we look at some model data, take a look at what the wind gusts are forecast to be on Wednesday, and this is an ensemble mean, so it's not one particular model run. It's a combination of a lot of them. So that gives you a little bit of confidence, but look how widespread the 30-mile-per-hour wind gusts are throughout all this purple area here. Would that cause a flight delay if you got wind gusts near 40 in Minneapolis, St. Paul? Yeah, it could. Otherwise, though, much of the country is actually not going to experience much in the way of very strong winds. High temperatures, you're starting to see what I was indicating here. These are highs for the day before Thanksgiving, only in the 20s, below freezing everywhere where you see the blue line. So that's another reason that could cause some flight delays, is just shifting winds with a strong cold front moving through that area. And precipitation-wise, again, remember the word precipitation does not imply rain or snow, but I'll tell you what it is. This is rain and thunderstorms in the southeast, and a lot of this is snow, and a lot of that is lake effect snow, and the same for the northwest, snow in the higher elevations, rain in the lower elevations around Seattle and into Portland as well. Now, if we go and look at the snow, and you can see some lake effect snows there in the UP of Michigan. Increasingly, though, it's going to start to become a problem here. I'll show you in a minute. On the day after, which is Thanksgiving. So let's skip ahead to that. The highlights of that day, the wind coming in behind that very strong low that's tracking through eastern Canada will shift actually into much of New England and still parts of the Great Lakes states. As far as the snow, a lot of this is going to be lake effect snow in this area on Thanksgiving, and then most of this is going to be mountainous snow here in the northwestern U.S. Temperatures are going to start cooling down. High temperatures only below freezing in Minneapolis, not very warm in Chicago, but you can start to see now cold air building in southern Canada, and that's going to continue a trend that will last beyond Thanksgiving itself. On precipitation for Thanksgiving, again, rain is not going to be hard to, or is going to be kind of hard to find unless you go to the Pacific Northwest and the lower elevations, but most of this is actually going to be snow. If you look here, again, lake effect snows are kicking in really on Thanksgiving and starting to affect Lakes Ontario and Lakes Erie, and then again, mountain snows in that area. And what about wind gusts? Well, again, like I said, they shifted, generally settled down, but still 30-plus mile-per-hour wind gusts, maybe in Chicago, but in hubs like around New York City, for example. Again, some delays are possible because of some pretty gusty winds on Thanksgiving Day itself. Now let's take a look at those temperature trends. Still toasty, though, on Saturday, tomorrow, with much of the upper plains experiencing 12 to 15 degrees above normal, same with the southeastern U.S. So a reading in Sioux Falls of 55 is actually pretty toasty for this time of year. Meanwhile, most of the country is actually showing above normal temperatures. Will that start to change? Not quite yet. Going into Monday, still pretty warm in the northern plains, but the hammer's about to drop on those folks. The only reason it's cool in the west is because of the continuing clouds and precipitation activity expected in that region. Then we go ahead to Wednesday, again, that travel day, and you can see big, huge drops in temperature here below normal readings. The east will be pretty warm still. Much of the west, kind of mediocre, about normal, maybe a little bit above in those areas. If we look at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, look what's starting to happen from Thanksgiving through Monday. So that includes the entire Thanksgiving holiday weekend, I guess you could say. There's a high confidence of much below normal temperatures through the Dakotas and Montana, and pretty high confidence going into Chicago, over to Pittsburgh, and in fact, much of the northeastern and north central U.S. look like there's going to be a dramatic shift from what was considered pretty high above normal temperatures to the opposite, pretty low below normal temperatures. Well, certainly there is a pattern shift. So beginning on Monday, this is what the mean 500 millibar flow will look like Monday through the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And you can kind of see a dip here, just kind of a trough of low pressure with the bluish color indicating, yeah, that's a little bit below normal, what you should see for this week come in, the last part of November or so. And the temperature anomaly, since this is a 7-day average, doesn't really show a lot. It does show the temperatures decreasing across the northern plains. But because it's an average over that entire weekly period, it's only briefly showing the kind of invasion of that cooler air. If you were to move this just a couple of days ahead, much of this would be blue, okay? And then the precipitation is looking like this, so we still see that pocket of rainfall rate pretty heavy, especially early on around Monday is when that heavy rain was forecast to develop. Let's look at the 8 to 14-day temperature outlook. That goes beyond so it starts the Saturday after Thanksgiving and goes through Friday, so the first week of December. And you can clearly see we're seeing a big deficit in temperature developing across the northern plains. Does that have snow implications? You bet it does. Still showing you this. This is the snow hazards. This is, again, the 2-week snow hazards. So this begins on the 29th of November after Thanksgiving and goes through December 5th. So it does show a slight risk of snow, and this would not be lake effect snow. These would be little systems kind of traveling along. This would be mountain snow here in Colorado, and then these areas are just obvious for the way they're shaped. This is a moderate risk of heavier snow in these areas. That would all be lake effect snow beginning after Thanksgiving, and that threat goes into the week after Thanksgiving and getting into early December. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.